This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We're spending the rest of the hour with Congressmember Ocasio-Cortez. This is the Congresswoman speaking on the floor of the House about the $500 billion corporate bailout, part of the massive coronavirus stimulus package.
We have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs, for our families. And the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future.
That was Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez prior to the vote on the stimulus package. Congresswoman, could you talk about the debate that you had within yourself in terms of whether to support this package, given the enormous tax breaks and the direct grants and loans to corporate America?
Yeah, well, you know, I think ultimately this debate, it was up to each and every member. I don't slight any member for how they voted. I could not bring myself to ultimately support this bill because I believe that people will soon see the extraordinary asymmetrical assistance that went to corporations. We're not just talking about $500 billion that went to Wall Street, as I mentioned in my remarks. That is being leveraged to $4 trillion for Wall Street and corporations. And what we're seeing in payroll protection for small businesses is just a drop in the bucket compared to that. But ultimately, what this administration did was hold every hospital hostage, hold every frontline worker hostage, and it is not an easy decision whatsoever for any member. But ultimately, I think that people will soon see the betrayal that was in this bill that was pushed forward by the administration and by Mitch McConnell. It is completely unethical and inhumane what has been done. And when we talk about the oversight in this bill, it is far too little. It is far too flimsy. And what we have essentially done was give Steve Mnuchin a blank check to pick and choose who this administration will reward with $4 trillion.
And I wanted to ask you on the portion of the stimulus package that supposedly will go to the American people and the American workers, the particular issue of what happens to, first there's a $1,200 per person outright grant that is given by the government, and then the added unemployment benefit of $600 a month for several months. The reality is, as you well know, that especially when it comes to the undocumented, they will not get any of that $1,200. And more importantly, even on unemployment, there are so many millions of people that work off the books in America, and obviously they cannot qualify for unemployment, so they will get no assistance whatsoever.
That's exactly right. And then on top of that, you also have a carve out of young people, where if you are claimed as a dependent on someone else's taxes, but you are above the age of, if you are 17 or older, you also receive no assistance and no cash assistance as well. So this is disproportionately hurting the young. It's hurting the undocumented. It's hurting people who work off the books. Which is to say that it hurts some of our most vulnerable populations. And the people who need that help the most right now, some of the people who need it the most, are also not getting it, which again contributes to a public health crisis in addition to an economic one.
Congressmember Ocasio-Cortez, before we go, we wanted to ask you about the election. They're holding the Wisconsin primary today, despite the adamant opposition of the governor and so many in Wisconsin. I mean, I think the In Milwaukee, they've closed over 100 polling places because they're often run by elderly poll workers and they're not coming in. But I want to ask you about the presidential election. You are the most high-profile surrogate of Bernie Sanders. You have been there with him in state after state. What is happening with his campaign right now? What are the plans?
Well, I do know that, like myself, the senator and I have both been focusing very heavily on COVID relief up into the CARES 2 package. I think right now one of the key things that we must push for, we must fight for, is the same thing that we have continued to fight for. We need to make sure that I believe that there are very strong concessions and accommodations made for a progressive future in our country. And I think when it comes to that, we need to see very serious movement towards a single-payer healthcare system, towards a living wage, towards justice for incarcerated people and justice for our immigrant populations. We need to have a strong agenda across the board. And without any sort of progressive conversation or progressive definition or concession to our party, we have to continue pushing forward. And so when it comes to the specific things, ultimately that is up to the senator. But I know, for one, that we must continue pushing to make sure, and particularly on climate change, what kind of agenda is being formed right now, and not only what that agenda is, but who is going to be making those decisions and really administering and executing on that agenda.
Do you know if he will go to the convention, if he will continue to be a presidential candidate through to the convention, if a convention is even held?
Yeah, whether the convention is held is an excellent question. I do not know. That is ultimately up to the senator. I think he makes these decisions one phase at a time, looking ahead to the next primary. I don't think that. I do not believe that he is set one way or another.
We're going to leave it. We're going to leave it there now. And I want to thank you so much for being with us, Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, U.S. Representative for New York's 14th Congressional District. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is brought to you by an amazing group of people committed to bringing you the most accurate information. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.